would like to introduce a new project by a friend of mine. His name is Mark and he founded a small startup which develops and publishes board games. Him and his friends have developed the game Darwin's Choice, a card game about evolution, which was successfully funded on Kickstarter 2018. Now they're back on Kickstarter with the expansion of Darwin's Choice, which integrates dinosaurs and prehistoric animal species in the game. You can also create your own evolutionary hybrid like Spinosaurus, Stegosaurus, Megatherium mix. Who wouldn't want to do that? So please go check it out. If you decide to support them on Kickstarter, they will be able to create a game that thematizes animals, dinosaurs, and evolution with cards that are all beautifully illustrated by hand. This is a dream come true. The campaign is 100% carbon neutral. They offset all CO2 caused by the production of the games 200%. All paper and cardboard used for the game production is FSC certified. In addition, they use as little plastic as possible. This is really important to them. So it's a cool game, a great idea, handmade, and it is good for the environment. So please go and check this project out. You will not regret it. The link is in the description. This video is not made for children. The content is aimed at adult viewers only. If you are aged 13 or under, please leave now. Hello everyone, this is Marco and welcome back to my channel. A while ago I introduced you to this project. My goal was to make my own version of the Rubber Rex like the classic figures from the 90s but with an updated sculpt. So I went to the drawing board and made one from scratch. Now the first was a prototype and it was made of foam, and I have now successfully designed a Rubber Rex. And what better way to start this new year by showing you how I made it. In this video, I'll be using the following products. Links are in the description. Milliput has kindly provided these products for me to use in this video. It is a company based in the UK and produces this amazing epoxy putty that can be used for virtually anything. It's easy to use and easy to sculpt. It is waterproof and sets rock solid. It also comes in many different colors. If you want to learn more about this product, be sure to visit their website. I always make sure I paint my figures with ARTEZA's water-based, scuff-resistant, self-healing, indoor and outdoor use, non-toxic, premium acrylic paints. Honestly guys, the quality of this paint is really good, so I suggest you check the links in the description to find out more and order some for yourself. I'll be using masking tape, PVA glue, sculpting tools, paintbrushes, lots of super glue, tons of time and lots of patience, and a glass of water. Now we're all set, we can start this project. As always, I'll start by making the core out of masking tape. Then I'll be sculpting all the details with Milliput epoxy putty. I should mention that I'll also use other materials, but I'll list them later on in the video. I've already covered the sculpting process in another video, but here's a condensed version anyway, in case you missed it. If you want to make your own T-Rex figure, feel free to pause or slow down the video if you need to. You could always take a screenshot of this render, so you can print it out at home and use it to get accurate proportions just like I do in my videos. It's very important that you get all the proportions correct, as it will help the figure later on to balance and stand. Of course, I'll be using the Milliput epoxy putty. Make sure you mix both parts thoroughly so you get an even color. So you start by blocking out the shape, adding more material bit by bit. With the epoxy putty, you have about an hour working time. So I suggest you work on smaller areas so you get enough time to get all the details right before it starts curing. You can see that I'm using a toothpick to do all the little details, as it's got a finer tip. You can see that I have not sculpted an eye yet, and that's because I'm going to use some glass eyes. I bought them on eBay and printed out a picture of a T-Rex eye and stuck it to the back. Glass eyes create a sense of realism by adding depth. Once the eye is positioned into the socket, we can then sculpt the eyelids around it. What is really cool about this Milliput epoxy putty is that you can smooth it out with water, which really helps softening the details. As you can see, now I'm starting to texture the sculpt. I do this with a toothpick by poking the material, creating an illusion of scales. So once you're happy with the sculpt, then you can turn it around and do the other side. I find that taking a picture of the sculpt and then editing it and flipping it with a mirror effect, you get a perfect copy of the sculpt that you've already done, but mirrored. So all you have to do is just copy from that picture to get your symmetry on point. So after the other side is complete, then we can sculpt the inside of the mouth and make the teeth. I'm making the teeth with toothpicks and I'm gluing them to the inside of the mouth with super glue. Be sure to make them in different sizes. So once the teeth are in place, we can sculpt the inside of the mouth. I'll be basing the sculpt again on this Horizon kit. You start by mixing a fresh batch of Milliput epoxy putty and pushing it down inside the mouth cavity, especially on the roof of the mouth. Also, I'm using a toothpick again to sculpt in all the details. You can sculpt the inside of the mouth if you want to make a figure that has its mouth open. So if you want a figure with its mouth closed, you can skip this step. So now is the time to make the bottom jaw. We will be basically repeating the same procedure as earlier, sculpting one side and then repeating it mirrored on the other side. As you can see, I am sculpting the bottom jaw with the head on top, so I can get a perfect fit. This is extremely useful if you want to make an articulated jaw, or if you just want to have different variations of the same figure, once it's been molded, of course. So maybe you could make a couple of T-Rexes, like from the Lost World, one roaring and one with its mouth closed. So the bottom jaw has got some bigger scales right under the eye. So I started with those and then made my way making the scales smaller all around them. Also, the lips have bigger scales too, so make sure you sculpt those individually. Again, just like the top lips. Generally, the size of the scales on the bottom jaw are smaller than the ones on the head. So I'm just poking the material with the tip of the toothpick. Then you can smooth it out with a soft brush dipped in water. Make sure you wash the brushes, otherwise they'll get really hard. So there we go, one side of the jaw is now complete. You can repeat the same procedure as the head and sculpt the other side. I made a couple of pegs in the head and the jaw and a couple of sockets on the neck, so they can be molded separately. Once everything's cured, then we can start sculpting the neck. Again, I'll be sculpting one side and then the other side later. Make sure you've got really good reference pictures so you can replicate all the folds in the skin. You really want to make the folds in the skin look soft and create the illusion of the skin being compressed and stretched over time. Let's remember that this particular T-Rex is about 30 years old, so you really want to make the skin look aged. That can be achieved by making deeper textures and then soften them out with a brush abundantly soaked in water. If you want to achieve a more realistic look, you can base the skin folds and texture on that of an elephant. Once the other side of the neck is complete, we can start sculpting the rest of the body. We really want to make the musculature stand out and look organic. By scoring the chest, we can create the illusion of a rib cage. We want the rib cage to be quite smooth. We'll be sculpting the details on top, so it looks like the bones look wrapped around by the skin. It isn't necessary sculpting all the scales individually. All you have to do is just score a lot of wrinkles in the skin, with the exception of the texture on the belly. The crocodilian scales and texture really need to stand out. That is a trademark feature of the Tyrannosaurus Rex from Jurassic Park. Before you start the next step, make sure that the putty is completely cured, because you don't want to mess it up by holding it and poking it with your fingers. The curing process can be sped up by heating the material with a hairdryer. Be extra cautious when you adopt this method. So room temperature Milliput usually cures in about 4 hours, but by heating it up, it will speed up quite a bit, and it will roughly start setting after about 30 minutes. Make sure you don't heat it up too much or it will compromise the quality of your sculpt. As you can see here, I've already started sculpting the feet. I'm sculpting this section separately so it can be molded individually. Make sure you make the feet look quite bird-like, and that's achieved by adding scoots on the toes. Those are quite big scales, so these need to be sculpted individually. The closer the scoots get to the end of the toe, the bigger the scales get. That is the main texturing on the feet. The rest is just skin folds. The rest of the texture compared to the scoots is quite soft. By shaping the milliput into cone shapes, we can create the claws. I did also add a bit of texture to the claws by scoring some lines in them, so that they would pick up some paint later in the painting stage. Now the T-Rex has big, strong, powerful legs, so we're going to make very big and strong muscles. Once the shape is done, we can start texturing. The knee has got bigger scales, and the scales gradually get smaller throughout the rest of the leg. Now the arms are quite tricky. Because they're so small, the texture is quite fine. First of all, I started with the tip of the fingers. I'm adding very small amounts of material on fingers and scoring horizontal lines, creating a miniature version of the scoots we did on the feet earlier. The rest of the arm has very fine texturing again, just like the foot. Again, I'm sculpting the tail separately. I've created a peg just like what I did with the neck. However, I am sculpting it attached to the body right now to make sure the seams aren't visible. The texturing on the tail has more pronounced wrinkles. After the molding stage is complete, we can assemble all the parts. And this is the sculpt finished. So once the sculpt is done, we can go ahead and mold the figure. So we will need a hard mold. I have made this mold with Milliput. I have made sure to use plenty of release agent on the sculpt, so the Milliput epoxy putty will come off and not leave bits behind. I'll also be using 100% silicone, cornstarch and acrylic paints. You need these materials in order to create a silicone putty, which will become the rubber body of our Rex. All you have to do is just mix the silicone with cornstarch until it becomes similar to Play-Doh texture-wise. So once you add enough cornstarch, it should become a lot less sticky. Then you can add the paint to make it colored. This is a technique I've learned from the King of Random. Rest in peace, King of Random. We all miss you very much. Now all you have to do is just press the putty inside the molds and wait for it to cure. It usually takes about 20 minutes. I have also molded and casted the head and the legs and the arms separately. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the rubber Rex. Assembled, painted and finished. I added some bendy wire inside the tail, adding an extra layer of posability. I have also added a sound box with a custom recording, and by squeezing the chest, you can hear the mighty roar. It also has chomping action. You can pick up and bite and thrash the human figures or other dinosaurs. I should also mention that it's in the same exact scale as your 3 3/4 inch human figures. But that's not all. I'm also making raptors. They're fully posable and rubbery as well. Stay tuned because I will be uploading a video about that too, very soon. Hey, you can also buy my figures and my paintings, as well as some sick merch on Etsy. Yes, I have an Etsy shop and the link is in the description. I would like to give a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. Seriously guys, your support really does mean the world to me, as it helps me do what I love for you. You help me buy materials, and most of all, you give me a helping hand with improving the quality of the content of my videos. Even if it's just a small donation, every little helps. If you like my videos, please press the like button. And you could consider subscribing. It's free. Oh, and don't forget to press the notification bell button, because you don't want to miss any of my new stuff, right? I'm gonna say bye now, because when you gotta go, you gotta go. I will see you in the next one.